Ruth Whitman clutched her small bundle of possessions as the wagon disappeared down the mountain trail, leaving her standing alone in front of a sturdy log cabin. At 24, she had endured years of being called simple and useless by her own family, who had finally decided she was too much of a burden to keep. When the arrangement had been made for her to come to the mountains as a wife to a man she'd never met, her father had made it clear this was her last chance at any kind of life. The cabin door opened, and a tall, broad-shouldered man emerged. Ezra Thompson was perhaps 35, with kind brown eyes and graying brown hair that suggested years of mountain living. He wore simple work clothes and moved with the careful deliberation of someone accustomed to solitude. "Miss Ruth," he said gently, removing his hat. "I'm Ezra Thompson. Welcome to your new home." Ruth had been bracing herself for disappointment or worse, but something in Ezra's voice made her look up with cautious hope. There was no judgment in his expression, only patience and what might have been compassion. "Mr. Thompson," she said quietly, "I should tell you straight away that my family considers me slow. I'm not clever like my sisters, and I can't read or write very well. If you want to send me back, I'll understand." Ezra studied her face, seeing not the simple woman her family had described, but someone who had clearly been made to feel worthless for far too long. "Ruth, why don't we go inside and have some coffee? Then you can tell me about yourself, and I'll tell you about life up here." The cabin's interior was surprisingly warm and comfortable. The furniture was handmade but well-crafted, and everything was clean and orderly. Ezra moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, preparing coffee and setting out freshly baked bread. "Ruth," Ezra said as they sat at his simple wooden table, "what do you enjoy doing? What makes you feel capable and useful?" Ruth was surprised by the question. No one had ever asked her about her preferences or abilities. "I like taking care of things," she said hesitantly. "Animals, gardens, cooking. I'm good with my hands for mending and such. But my family says those aren't important skills for a proper lady." "Up here in the mountains," Ezra said warmly, "those are exactly the skills that matter most. I've been living alone for 8 years, and while I can manage, I'd value having a partner who understands how to make a house into a home." Over the following days, Ruth discovered that Ezra had spoken the truth. He wasn't looking for a sophisticated wife to impress neighbors or manage social obligations. He needed a true partner who could share the work of mountain living and appreciate the peace and beauty of their isolated valley. Ruth proved to be far more capable than her family had ever acknowledged. She had an intuitive understanding of plants and animals, quickly learning to tend Ezra's vegetable garden and care for his small flock of chickens and goats. Her cooking, simple but hearty, transformed their meals from mere sustenance to genuine comfort. Most surprisingly, Ezra never made her feel inadequate about her limitations with reading and writing. Instead, he quietly began teaching her in the evenings, patiently helping her sound out words from his few books and showing her how to write letters and numbers. "You're not slow, Ruth," he told her one evening as she successfully read an entire page from his almanac. "You learn differently than some people, but you learn thoroughly. And you understand things about living and caring that many educated people never figure out." As autumn approached, Ezra made an announcement that surprised Ruth. "I've been thinking about building an addition to the cabin, a proper bedroom for you, and maybe a larger kitchen area where you'd have more space for your cooking and preserving." Ruth looked up from the quilt she was mending. "Ezra, you don't need to do that for me. I'm grateful for what you've already provided." "Ruth," Ezra said seriously, "this isn't charity. You've become my partner in every sense of the word. You've made this place a real home, and I want you to feel like it truly belongs to you too." The addition took most of the fall to complete, with Ruth helping however she could. She proved surprisingly good at thinking through practical problems, suggesting improvements to Ezra's plans that made the new spaces more functional and comfortable. When the work was finished, Ezra stood with Ruth on their small front porch, looking out over the valley that had become their shared domain. "Ruth," he said quietly, "when your family described you in their letters, they made you sound like a burden, someone who needed to be taken care of. But you've never been a burden to me. You've been a blessing." Ruth felt tears gather in her eyes. "Ezra, my whole life, People told me I wasn't smart enough, wasn't useful enough, wasn't good enough for anything important. But here with you, I feel like I matter. You do matter, Ezra said firmly. Not because of what you can or can't do, but because of who you are. You're kind, you're gentle, you work hard, and you care about things deeply. Those qualities are far more valuable than anything they teach in fancy schools. As winter settled over their mountain valley, Ruth realized that her family's rejection had led her to exactly where she belonged. The life that had seemed like exile had become a sanctuary where her natural abilities were valued and her limitations were irrelevant. One snowy evening, as they sat by the fire with Ruth reading aloud from a letter they'd received from town, Ezra reached over and took her hand. "Ruth," he said softly, "I want you to know that what started as an arrangement has become something much more for me. You're not just the woman who came to help with my household. You're my wife in every way that matters, and I love you." Ruth looked at Ezra through happy tears. "I love you too, Ezra. My family thought they were getting rid of someone useless, but you've shown me I was never useless. I was just in the wrong place." "You're in the right place now," Ezra said, squeezing her hand gently. "And you always will be, as long as you want to stay." As the snow fell softly outside their warm cabin, Ruth understood that sometimes the most profound blessings come disguised as hardships. Her family's rejection had brought her to a man who saw her true worth, a place where her natural gifts were treasured, and a love that was built on acceptance and appreciation rather than expectations and judgments. The mountains had given her more than just a home. They had given her the chance to discover who she really was when she was valued for her authentic self rather than measured against someone else's narrow definition of worth. In the morning, Ruth would wake up in her own bedroom, in her own home, next to a man who called her wife with genuine love and respect. And for the first time in her life, she would know with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged.